Uh, Good morning again. I am Gene Phillips with the Washington Department of Natural Resources, and I'm the district manager for the Forest Resilience, or like I said, slide says, Service Forestry Program. And before I really get into some of my slides, I just briefly talk about a couple of things. We are a new program to the Washington DNR on the west side of the state. I have a slide here that can talk about it, but we've been basically in existence about 2 years. I remember to stand by the mic. And we have I have a staff of 3 full-time employees, including myself, who go out and provide basically 2 main facets of our program. Is technical assistance to landowners, and then we have a cost share program. In that time, since basically May of 2022, we've done over 400 site visits in the Northwest region for what the DNR covers, which is Whatcom, Skagit, Snohomish Island, and San Juan County. My staff, we've probably looked at over 80 to 100,000 acres of forest lands that small forest landowners have. For definition's sake, it's not on any of my slides, but the DNR considers a small forest landowner anyone that owns up to 5,000 acres, is non-industrial. And even though some of those larger acres may harvest timber, as long as they don't harvest more than 2 million board feet over a 3-year period, we still consider them a small forest landowner and can be eligible for our services, which is pretty cool, because some people might not think, oh, I own 3,000 acres. I don't fall in that, but you do. So, in that time, we've probably we have, as of last count, have been set up, administered, and completed a portion of 48 cost shares with landowners for a total almost of $500,000 since the project's inception, the program's inception. So we've been doing a lot of cost share work throughout the 5 counties. And probably right now, I'd say the lion's share of our work has actually been in San Juan County, because that area had long been underserved by the DNR. So that's one of the things that we've focused a lot of effort on. But I can go through some of my slides quickly. I'm going to try not to just read, but the funding for our program came from House Bill 1168 from the previous biennium, not the one we're currently in, but basically provides support for DNR to address long-term forest health and reduce wildfire danger. Expanded the Forest Resilience Division in our regional capacity. So originally, up until a few years ago, the 4 West Side regions did not have a program. We had 1 service forester covering the entire west side of Washington. Now we have approximately around a staff of 15 amongst the 4 regions. Also allows expansion of stewardship and financial assistance programs and wildfire mitigation and forest health treatment needs. And we also now includes financial assistance for Western Washington, as previously in place from Eastern Washington. Just some statistics here. Statewide, there's over 215,000 small forest landowners, own almost 3 million acres of land, located in lowland areas, mainly near bodies of water. Most of the harder to access ground is owned by the state DNR or Forest Service, BLM agencies like that. One of the telling statistics is in that 12-year period, 400,000 acres of forest land lost between that time frame from 2007 to 19, for many number of reasons, but most of it's been development. Homeowner subdivisions, strip malls, you name it, that kind of stuff. So it's very important to the DNR that we want to help provide assistance to small forest landowners to keep that in forest lands. A lot of small forest landowners have different focus. They're focusing on nature and aesthetics, recreation, non-timber forest products, hunting, family and privacy. Income and investment is just one of the things that are not, is more one of the traditional uses, but there's a lot of other uses out there that small forest landowners like to get off of their property they own. So we have some objectives within our program, as in to increase forest resiliency and education. So events like this, outreach and education is part of our program, but beyond the technical assistance. Lower the risk of catastrophic fire. 2 years ago, we had the Bolt fire. That was a catastrophic fire. We've done some work on some small forest landowners in that area since that fire. And these kind of fires are probably going to continue and be more frequent as the years go by with this climate change, everything that's going on with that. Longer, hotter summers. We're experiencing more drought even. Last year was pretty droughty. Farmers can attest to that. Conduct forest health improvements via projects or maybe with our cross-boundary projects. We're looking at trying to work with the Forest Service as well to assist them on some management on their grounds. Reduce fire and fuels and mitigate threats from insects, disease, and wildfire. Those are our main overall objectives within the program. And much like the other programs I've already presented, we have potential eligible cost share projects, which is the one thing is our program focuses on, if we're doing some sort of thinning project, it's non-merchantable trees, which are typically less than 8 inches in diameter and smaller. But our projects can include fire breaks or fuel breaks, removal of invasive species, which would go under our brush control. We also have brush control treatments, fuels reduction, slash disposal, tree planting and afforestation, prescribed burning assistance, and forest management plan stewardship assistance, either through a landowner wants to hire, say, a consulting forester, they can. We can provide some financial assistance, and we can assist landowners with writing plans. We're not going to write plans for people, but we'll definitely be like their technical reviewer. So if they want to tackle that themselves, or if they hire a consultant, then we review those plans, we make edits, we suggest edits to landowners who are writing them on their own, and then help them get that formalized plan signed, sealed, and delivered to our program and to the counties, especially if they're looking to use like the NRCS equip program, or if they want to say get into the designated forest land program, which is run by the individual counties you live in. We don't manage that program. So non-intended projects, removal of just select trees due to mortality. Like if landowners say have a few dead trees here and there, we're not going to be providing assistance. We'll provide you some information on what you could do with it, and then we would refer you to contacting the right type of contractor, which would most likely be like a certified arborist. Say removal leftover from previous commercial harvest management activities conducted by a landowner. So we're not going to do treatments where somebody's recently harvested their timber. Post-harvest activities are the responsibility of landowners, especially tree planting and reforestation, because any type of commercial harvest requires an FPA from the DNR, which is a forest practices application, and they're required by law to reforest their property if they do that type of harvest. So we don't do any type of cost sharing with the landowners. We can provide some technical assistance, like, okay, this is the type of species you should plant. Maybe this is how many trees per acre you should plant, things like that, but we're not going to do cost share. Treatments that do not meet the program's objectives to improve forest health or reduce fire risk. We've had some requests for assistance. They want to do very minimal work, and it just doesn't really meet the goals of our program. We don't do landscaping and arboriculture. We've had some of those requests. Hey, can you help do this and that? No, you're real. If you want your brush trimmed to make it look nice and stuff, that's not, you're talking to the wrong people. That's your responsibility to take care of. We've had some requests like that. Or I've got one dead tree or the top's dying. Can we help them out with that? Again, we're going to refer them. Sorry, that's, going to have to go. That's more of an arboriculture thing. And eligibility is discretion of the DNR service forestry staff, but that hasn't been really an issue. Most landowners we've been visiting over the last almost 2 years now, most everybody's have been eligible for some sort of cost share if they're interested in it. But we have a pretty simple process. That's how the program has been intended. So that's one of probably the biggest differences between some of the other programs like the Farm Services or the EQIP program that NRCS has. You schedule a site visit with one of my staff. And it could be just as simple as that. They come out, they do a forest health assessment, they can do a wildfire risk assessment. We also have home ignition zone assessments that are fire staff, which I coordinate with if you're looking for maybe a home ignition zone assessment. Again, none of these visits are a charge to a landowner, no cost. But if we're out and the field visit could just say, okay, you've got these issues, the forest stands look like this. You've maybe got a few insect disease issues, and the forest will write up a field visit summary and send it to the landowner. It could be as simple as that. And that's all the service we provide them. But if they're interested in more and potentially the cost share program, right there in the field, they could complete and sign a request for financial assistance. And the forester should be able to tell just from that initial site visit whether that property could qualify for some sort of cost share. So it's really meant to be simple. Another quick question. Well, we don't have a minimum acreage for cost shares. The question was, is there a minimum amount of acres that could be eligible? But one thing you have to remember, economy of scale is always, especially if we use contractors. But if you're interested in doing a self-cost cost share, then that would be no issue, down to an acre. If it's still worth the landowner's while to do it themselves. And I'll get into that in a minute, the types of cost shares we can do. But you can fill out that form. Basically, they can say this property is eligible for cost share. And then basically what happens next is the landowner agrees to a forest treatment prescription that is developed by the forestry staff from the specialist that comes out. So they'll develop treatment specifications of the eligible treatment type for a cost share. They'll write it up and the landowner agrees with it. And then if we go the contractor route, basically the landowner makes every attempt to try to get 3 bids from different contractors. And we do have a contractor list that we can send you. We don't recommend any single one, but we have, so we're playing fair in the sandbox, as they say, because we can't preferentially just keep pushing work toward a certain contractor. But they get bids, they choose who they want to use. And then they send that to that forestry specialist and they can approve it right there. Okay, this bid is good. Bids have some, some things that are required. We work on a cost per acre basis. We need a total project cost and a number of acres to be treated. We also have cap limits to the different treatments. So we're meant to be 50%. I want to make sure that's where our starting point is. We're looking into doing further types of cost share at a 75% rate and possibly 100% rate on case-by-case basis. But the standard is 50-50. So that's where the starting point is. But if the process continues through the application, they review the submitted bids and we provide the quote, the winning bid. Then we'll take that. We send all the details of our projects in-house to we have a fiscal person that works out of Olympia who reviews all our projects, submit them. And basically once the approval letter is generated, it'll be sent to the landowner and they can start work. Okay, once they get that letter in hand, they can do it themselves or they can hire that contractor and they're allowed to start work. And again, if a landowner wants to do it, they can do a self-cost cost share. That's the other option. The rates still apply. The 50% rates still apply. We still do the treatment specs. and they agree to it, except the approval process is much easier because we're not waiting for bids. They're just gonna do it themselves. We could submit that in and an approval letter is generated and they can go right to work. I've had some turnarounds where I get the application, the whole package, we approve it. A week later, the landowner's out there cutting brush or doing whatever the treatment is. Pretty nice, pretty simple process. You know, there are reimbursement allocations. You'll get the letter, it'll show how much reimbursement is allowed per type of treatment. There's, of course, we set a project completion date because we don't want to make the projects go on forever, but basically we work off of the bienniums that the state budgets. So basically, if like we catch a landowner right at the beginning of a biennium, we could give them almost 2 years to complete a project. But they're more in typically the 6-month range. Cap rates, like I said, exist because we're trying to make this 50-50. And work can commence upon the receipt of the approval letter. There are some responsibilities by the landowner. They're the ones responsible for locating property boundaries. We can assist in that. And, you know, if the property boundary is clearly marked, no problem. If it's been surveyed by a licensed land surveyor, that's easy. You know, we can do that. But we always want to kind of err on the side of caution. We don't want to have a landowner deal with a trespass situation if they go off on someone else's property. So if we flag a boundary, we're going to err on the side of staying more on the property and not like say, okay, we're going to follow the line because we're not licensed surveyors. They need to identify any infrastructure hazards, you know, underground power lines, propane tanks, things of that nature, things like that, maybe pits, you know, but, you know, we've seen it all on our site visits. Ensure the project is completed. So this is one of the differences with our program. When we cost share and they hire a contractor, we're just the conduit for the funding and the technical assistance and providing the technical specifications. So a landowner is really their own contract quote administrator with that contractor. We will come out and provide a site visit during the project to make sure that the contractor is doing the work as prescribed, but we will talk to the landowner saying, hey, they're not quite following it. We'll give them the direction to give to them because it's not our contract. But upon completion of a project, if the landowner says, hey, we're done, or the contractor's done, we will come out and do a final inspection prior to any approval of payments. And our staff will approve that. Payment to contractor once they submit any receipts to DNR. So there's 2 ways to do a contractor self-cost or a contractor with a typical cost shares. Like the landowner could sign up as a vendor with the state controller's office and the payment would go to them and then they could pay the contractor that way. Or during that approval letter process, then there's paperwork that's sent to the landowner that the vendor or the contractor could sign up as a vendor and then they could get paid directly, which is a little cleaner. A lot of landowners prefer to do it that way, but we have both. So, and then any cost overruns, though, for some reason it overruns cost, the landowner covers that. So, and then we do have some post-project requirements. Maintain the project area for 15 years, and because the goal is to keep the forest land healthy and in forest stand conditions. So, and why we do this is we want to perpetuate that forest land. And as long as the landowner maintains it, they could come back and request assistance again, maybe 10, 15 years down the road. But if they haven't maintained it on their own like they should be, then it's going to tell us, well, they're not really that invested in maintaining it. And we're probably not going to fund another cost share with them. So it's a little of incentive, you know, do the maintenance, because if your property is in an overrun, say by blackberries, and we do a brush disposal project, and then we get it down to a manageable state, but yet the landowner never touches it, or they finally decide after 12, 15 years, what's it going to look like again? Big giant field of blackberries. You got to maintain it. We're not going to fund something in the future again. So we want that landowner to have a role in maintaining that. I'm just gonna do some really quick slides of just some treatments of some work that we've already done, projects, but this is just before and after photos of some brush removal, thinning, and some pruning. Just before and after photos. This was actually a project out on the Salmon Islands. See a chipper in the background of the one, but they've done a very nice job of the work. This was actually a fire crew project. We can have our fire crew come out and do some cost share projects. Again, that's on a case by case basis, but the landowner rented all the equipment. They rented the chipper. They paid for that. They rented some pole saws, things like that. That was their contribution to the program, where our fire crew went out and did all the labor. I kind of went to those pictures quickly because I wanted to answer a few questions. I know we're going to have a Q&A here and at 11:30, but if you have some questions about my program, fire away. Yes.
Do you find that the vendors so if you go through the program and you find a vendor, you select a vendor, do they typically require money up front? Because from what I'm hearing, it's like the state will release the funds until the final inspection. So you find that vendors want some kind of prepayment that would then fall to the landowner.
I've had a few landowners tell me that the contractor wanted some sort of deposit, but for the most part, no. We can do partial payments. So let's say we have a 20-acre project and it's going to take 3 months, and they say they want to get paid something. Well, our staff will go out, verify the area that has been completed, say they've treated 5 acres out of the 20 or half of it. We can do a partial payment. So one, there's a flow of money going to both the landowner and more importantly, the contractor. So we can do that. And then one thing, it was a question asked a little bit ago. If a landowner wants to do, say, use the EQIP program, and then they contact us, we can't double dip on the same piece of ground. So, or the same footprint, you want to say. So maybe a landowner does have 20 acres. Well, maybe they're going to equip 10 acres with NRCS. We can cost share the other 10 acres there. We just can't be treating the same piece of acres, the same acres as a different program. Does that make sense? It's one of those things. We'll ask that of landowners if they're enrolled with other programs. Think of it this way: if a landowner's getting 75 or 100% cost share on 10 acres and they're getting 50% on, say, another 10 acres, they're really getting a lot of assistance there to make it very economical for a landowner. I mean, because we can do more than 50%, and we went through what we were calling our environmental justice. We can use a matrix. We have where we're trying to be equitable. Not everyone's got the same finances. Not everyone's exactly, it's not only the socio-political side of environmental justice, but it's financial side. And if a project is warranted, we can score it. We use a matrix. We can score it. And if it pans out, maybe we can do more. That's where we're looking at doing maybe more than 50%. But one of the things we added to that, like if you're a veteran, or maybe you're disabled, things like that, where they can't hire somebody, but they'd love to do the work themselves, but they physically aren't able to because of their physical limitation. That's where the environmental justice comes into play. We can help people, achieve some of their personal objectives. Other questions? Okay, well, that's the end of my presentation. Hollis is going to be coming up. He's going to talk about some of the landowner assistance programs that the DNR has.
All right, thanks everybody for the wait. My name is Hollis Crapo. I'm the Regulation Assistance Forester with our state Small Forest Landowner Program, or Small Forest Landowner Office. I cover all of Northwest region, so Snohomish County on north to Canada, all the islands, everything like that. And where our service forestry program focuses on non-commercial activities, We help with the commercial side of things. So our office contains the Regulation Assistance Program. It's not progressing my slides. There we go. Contains Regulation Assistance Program as well as some additional cost share financial assistance programs. So Washington State has one of the most comprehensive and robust forest regulation systems in the country, second only to California. And because of that, it has an increased burden on small forest landowners because you don't have time to be focused solely on your timber management, your forest management. And as the legislature was adopting these rules, they recognized the importance of supporting our small forest landowners to make sure that you were able to manage the forest the way you see fit as well. And so our office was created to assist you in doing that. So we are the focal point for concerns, policies, resources, et cetera, for the small forest landowners statewide. So Gene defined it earlier, but the DNR uses the definition for small forest landowner less than 2 million board feet per year. Pretty confident that everybody in this room fits that description. If you aren't sure, I can help you calculate out how much board footage you're harvesting. No problem. So our mission is to help conserve small forest land ownership, help keep land in forestry use, and maintain ecological and economic viability. We also develop policies to conserve forests. We have a small forest landowner advisory committee that helps us stay in touch with small forest landowners and your needs, your concerns, and then also dovetail with them in creating policy that gets adopted through the Forest Practices Board. So in our programs, in addition to my role at the regulation assistance, there are capital programs. So our Forest Family Fish Passage Program is a landowner assistance, financial assistance program to replace fish barrier culverts or any other fish barriers on fish-bearing streams on your property. Frequently, culvert replacements are financially above and beyond what most small landowners can swing on their own. But under the forest practice rules, all fish barriers need to be removed and allow fish to travel through, right? And so in order to help relieve that financial burden, they created this program. If you've done a harvest within 5 years, there is potentially some cost that would be, we would ask you to help foot the bill, essentially, up to $5,000. But once it's enrolled in here, it alleviates your regulatory burden, so you don't have to replace it before you do a timber harvest, so long as it's enrolled in the program. All of the project is managed by us or our partners in the program. And while the enrollment doesn't happen, or the enrollment happens immediately, the replacement might take a few years depending on funding and priorities. The next is the Forest Riparian Easement Program. This is a conservation program to buy a 40-year conservation easement on riparian areas, riparian trees that need to be left under the forest practice rules post-harvest to help compensate landowners for the trees that they aren't able to capitalize on the value of because they are left due to regulations. And then the Rivers and Habitat Open Space Program is focused on, their permanent easements focused on high value habitat, either channel migration zones or endangered species habitat. Usually they tend towards large projects, large areas, and it's a separate conservation program. All right, so the Fish Passage Program, how many of you are familiar with what a fish barrier culvert is? some of you, you know, stuff like this, we talk about it, but it's not always something that makes sense to most landowners. So you can have barriers that are, for example, like a culvert sticks out and then the water drops down into the stream and it has a 3-foot gap. The fish would have to jump up into a culvert that has no substrate in it and then swim through in order to get past it. It's a significant barrier. You can also have undersized culverts that increase the speed of the water as they come through the culvert, and that acts as a barrier to fish as well. So any barriers that you have can be enrolled in this program, and hopefully they get replaced as we get funding for the program, every biennium. And if you have questions as to whether or not what you have are fish barriers, that's where I come in. I come out, do road assessments, do land assessments, helping landowners navigate these policies and regulations. So here's one project that came through. They had a large culvert. It was not only shotgunned, but it was not maintained. So you have the culvert starting to fail and need to be replaced anyway, and they were able to put in a bridge. So FREP, I don't know if any of you have heard, but there was some legislation this year that updated this program. It is now, instead of a 50-year easement, it's a 40-year easement. Additionally, it compensates for 90% of the timber value. It was previously 50 to 90%, depending on a kind of complicated equation that they had in their program. Now it's just a straight 90% value, which is significant for all of these trees that you have to leave anyway. In order to qualify, you have to have a parcel larger than 20 acres or own more than 80 acres in the state. Forest land, you have to meet the definition of a small landowner harvesting less than 2 million board feet a year. You have to have a timber harvest adjacent to that riparian management zone. You can't do it without a harvest. You can't be, the harvest that you did do can't be converting it to non-forest use. So you can't be doing it and building a home on the site. It has to be maintained in forest land. That being said, the enrollment process is fairly straightforward and goes fairly quickly. We have the FREP program has foresters that come out, do the assessment. If you aren't sure if you qualify, they're happy to come out and help explain the program, explain what would qualify and what you need to do. So Rivers and Habitat Open Space Program, it's the permanent easement on forest land with either unconfined channel migration zones, which see a picture up here, large streams that move across the landscape. Those areas aren't able to be managed for timber anyway because of our laws. We want to keep them as habitat for fish, very valuable for woody debris and in-stream sediment, etc. And then also critical habitat for state threatened and endangered species. Most commonly, it's related to marbled murrelet or northern spotted owl. Those are the ones that have big impacts in forest land in the state, but it can be any of these. And like all of the other programs, if you have questions about whether or not your forest qualifies or would be a good candidate, let us know. And we're more than happy to come out, do a site visit, talk to you about it and evaluate it. So eligibility has to contain critical habitat or CMZ. It has to be designated forest land as per the tax program or the assessor's county tax status, and then free of any liabilities that would jeopardize the project. So if there are other commitments, easements on the property that would potentially conflict with our easement. This one as well, it's really straightforward. You submit a short application. The committee evaluates and determines eligibility and priority for all of the projects that have been submitted. And then funding comes from the legislature, and we essentially fund as many projects that we can for the value. The one difference between Rivers and Habitat Open Space Program and FREP, the Riparian Easement Program, is that the Riparian Easement Program, once you've submitted, you're enrolled, you don't need to resubmit. You're already, once you enroll, you're approved, and you just wait for funding to come to you. The Rivers and Habitat Open Space Program is one that requires to be you to reapply every biennium. So they have a 2-year biennium. You have to reapply every year in hopes of getting funded. So that brings me to my position. I'm Regulation Assistance Forester. I cover our region. There are different foresters for each region in the state. We also have a habitat biologist that can conduct stream shocking surveys, help folks navigate complex forest practices applications, answer any permit regulatory questions that you might have. Does this need a permit? Does it not need a permit? Can I do this? Can I not do this? If you have trying to fill out an application and you don't know how to do that, we answer all your questions. I can do a site visit, walk the stand with you, explain how buffers are measured, how RMZs are laid out on the ground, all that stuff. So this is the general process for completing an FPA with us. The short answer is, if you're going to do a timber harvest, you need to get an approved forest practices application for the property. And that, while that can be complicated, I can help you walk through it, either answering your questions as you go or sitting with you and going through the application together, as well as helping get it across the finish line. I can review the application before you submit it. If the forest practices forester, the regulatory forester, requires any changes or anything like that, I can help you understand what those mean and help get those put together. So you can be confident that it's going to work and you'll get an approved application. Additionally, we conduct voluntary road assessments. So if you have roads on your forest land, you don't know the state of them or what the best management for them would be to get them up to standard or to maintain them in good working order, I'd be happy to come out. We do road assessments, talk about culverts, talk about road grades, talk about crowning and all that stuff. So you have a solid plan in place moving forward to keep your roads functioning, keeping sediment out of the streams, and not running into any regulatory hiccups when it comes time to harvest your timber. Oh, covered all that too. Our wildlife and fish and wildlife biologist, as I said, he can do shocking surveys for determining fish use. Normally that costs a few $1,000s to hire a biologist to do that, but through the state funding, we've been able to hire a full-time biologist, and he can conduct those surveys and help you put in water type modification forms, etc. All right, I went through pretty quick. If you have any questions, now's an okay time. We're transitioning to our panel pretty quick here, so you can grab me after, or just take one of my cards, and as questions come up, give me a call, shoot me a text message, shoot me an email. More than happy to talk, more than happy to come out and do site visits. Oh, sorry, my name is Hollis Crapo. I'm this one here. Yeah, Hollis Crapo, covering Northwest region. Yeah. So the program was, or the question was, how much of the fish barrier project costs are covered? It is almost 100%. So the only situation where you would have to pay anything for the FFF2P to remove that fish barrier is if you conducted a timber harvest within 5 years of the project being completed. And if that's the case, you would have to cost share up to $5,000. But it would be no more than $5,000 and no more than 50% of the project costs, and only if you'd harvested recently. Additionally to that, once your project gets selected for funding, you don't have to worry about any engineering. You don't have to worry about project management. All of that's handled by us. Yes, it does. Yeah, so any riparian management zone that needs to be left under the law is eligible for FREP.
So like we look at the fish area or take over on the site that we can
Yeah.
dive into the right person.
Yeah, Ian, as well as Bud Westcott and I all worked together in regulation before we moved to these positions. So they're all quite well versed in all of these programs. All right, thank you.